Right.
Females, you simply need to know how to investigate a man. That's your only responsibility. You find a wife, you find a good thing, and this is what the manufacturer says. That is saying that this model that is called a wife, this model comes prepackaged with everything you need. That is what a good thing means. If the wife is not working, something is wrong with you.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you again for coming back as we are going into chapter 2. Right into it, chapter 2 of the marriage key. And I you know, I as we were talking a little bit, sir, off camera, we were talking a little bit about just some of the impact this particular chapter, how timely this chapter has been
Yes.
for me, and the context that I find, the context of life and the season of life I find myself in.
Hmm.
This has been um quite impactful because, like, I was saying off camera, and I'm saying to our audience today, about 90% of the challenges I've been encountering within a high school campus setting, at least about 90% of them are traced back to either a fatherless home, or a I want to say a deficient man, if I could say like that.
Yeah, yeah.
And so because this chapter is talking about the need or the importance for mentorship and training in the
Yes.
home, especially for the males, no? And you know, I must say, in the earlier years of my life, I had a wrong understanding of what a man should be.
Wow.
It's until I encountered a man who decided to live by the manufacturer's way and manual.
Hmm.
And it wasn't that he was necessarily sitting me down and saying XYZ, but I saw it demonstrated, and it conflicted with my mindset at the time. But I saw this is what it really means to be a man. And you know, so sir, I just want to say, I want to take the time to say I appreciate the work in this chapter that you put in. Um and yeah, so but how are you, sir? Hi.
It's going good. It's going good. I'm grateful to be here again to discuss more in this chapter. I think, as you said earlier, it's a very key chapter,
Mm,
and in the ingredients in it, no, they're very key ingredients. So I'm looking forward to this one also.
It's you know, every day we're learning something from somebody, you know.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I'm catching is one of the heartbeat or the heartbeat of this chapter.
Hmm.
Very, 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 very timely. And so, you know, let me give you space. Do you have any opening comments or remarks you want to make about this chapter? Anything on your heart or your mind that you want to put out there before? Because I have some questions for you, you know. So,
Yeah. I just want to say that training and mentoring is something that we take seriously in this world, no?
mm-hmm,
And there are very few things that we do today that we don't require training and mentoring.
mm,
That
mm,
includes things as basic as driving
mm,
to flying a plane. And this is why schools exist, and you have to make this grade and this passing mark. Training and mentoring is very key. And I want to
mm-hmm,
also add that training and mentoring does not guarantee success.
mm.
So you may get the best training and the best mentoring and still fail because of lack of application.
Very good.
And I just want to throw that in, that it's not automatic without
It's
your input, no?
without your input.
Yeah.
Mm. I man, I like that comment. I think that's a great way to segue into one of the questions I have here. I was reading
Hmm.
the chapter, and you talk about you make a very powerful statement. We're always being groomed by someone for something.
Yeah.
And you were talking about the importance of grooming at home, especially from a father to his son,
Yeah.
specifically speaking. Um, and what as I was reading, I couldn't help but say, hey, you know, this takes intentionality. All right, this
Yeah.
takes intentionality. But my question is there a unintentional grooming in the home that takes place that we need to be aware of?
There is always unintentional grooming. As
Mm,
as a race, we are creatures that our life is built on following what we see.
Mm-hmm.
That's how we learn our language that we speak.
Mm-hmm.
This is done by repetition and by something being placed in front of us every day. We begin to have this ability to access and to join things together and to make
Mm-hmm.
sense of it. So regardless of whether we are directly grooming a child or not, grooming is happening.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is that many times this grooming is not proper grooming. For later
Right,
on in the
right.
chapter, as we discuss about absenteeism, that's not proper grooming.
Yeah,
You're
yeah.
telling your child you don't have to be there.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
so their indirect grooming always happens. You may be groomed watching television.
Mm.
You may be groomed walking on the street and hearing other people talk, seeing how other people behave. There's always grooming. We are
Mm-hmm.
creatures of groomdom, if you want to put it that way.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
You're
yeah.
constantly being groomed.
Yeah, it's you know, we grow up a lot hearing do as I say but not as I do. And and I think, you know, as you talked about earlier, if you don't apply what you learn intellectually, if you don't implement it, right? But
Mhm.
I think we're people who we learn a lot by what we see, like image, and so
Yes.
that I think that was really what I was thinking about when I was talking about this, that when I wrote this question, because um we could say do as I say and not as I do all day long, but what is the one that's having more impact, right? um
Right.
I do think intentionally saying, hey son, come here, this is how you iron your clothes, or this is how you fix an engine. That's great, this is and all of that, but our day-to-day, I call it daily platforms, our living example um says so much and
It
writes.
does.
Yeah, yeah.
It does. I think of these guys that are, we are so malleable.
Hmm.
We are so moldable as humans. And the younger we are, the more we are moldable.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And so when you look at Michael Jordan, you don't respect Michael Jordan or whatever player is currently, a star.
Yeah.
But you don't look at that person and respect him because he sits on the TV and talks to you
Mm-hmm.
and call you aside and say, you shoot the ball this way, you shoot the ball that way. You respect Michael Jordan. You want to be like Mike because of what you see. So you buy his tennis shoe, you try
Mm-hmm.
to do moves like him,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and he doesn't even know you. And so here we have this type of indirect training that happens.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It's a very, and I think, you know, a lot of the indirect training, it has a lot to do with how a husband and wife relate, isn't it?
That's right.
I
That's
think
right.
that is one of the ones that and you begin to, you also introduce this concept that this which I thought was like a great way how you put it, but it's like animosity um could tend to an absent father,
Yeah.
where animosity brews between the mother and the father, and eventually, I guess the best plan for the father is to leave.
Yeah.
And so, but so my what's your advice in terms? Would you recommend couples to stick it out for the sake of their kids? And you know, is there a point where or is it healthy for couples to say we're going to work it out for our kids, one, and if not, is there a point in time where they have a right to leave, because if the animosity is becoming dangerous, how does that
Yeah.
all work? Yeah.
I am a bit torn on this one because I don't want to be careless in encouraging people to just leave.
Right, right, right.
I do somehow have this concern though
Mm.
that you don't stay, you must love yourself.
Okay.
And so you don't stay in a situation if you don't have to, if you're not forced to,
Right.
where you're damaging yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Because the manufacturer wants you to love your neighbor the way you love yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't believe you should stay in a situation where you're being abused mentally, or verbally, or spiritually. There is this constant disrespecting of your person, a sort of infidelity, a cheating, and you come home and you know your husband or your boyfriend or whosoever is cheating on you, and you stay because of the kids. I don't know. I'm torn because my belief is that don't stay and take it. The more you stay and take it, the more you're encouraging and tolerating.
Right.
And if I can have my cake and eat it, then I will. You decide this is enough and you decide that a separation is needed. Because if you're cheating on me, then our agreement is already broken. And if you're cheating, because I'm sure when we got together, you didn't say, you'll be my sweetheart. You chick on the side. And because if I agree to that, then I shouldn't complain. Yeah, so I'm torn with that one. I do believe, though, if I had to give an answer, that you should not tolerate it. You should be as patient as you can within sense. You know, if this person is cheating on you for months, you find out about it and there's no change. If this person is hitting you or verbally abusing you, lifting his voice after you, then either he goes to get counseling or, and notice I'm putting this on the male, because if your wife is being violent towards you, although it is not right, the thing with that is, what are you doing? Because wives reproduce what you give to them. They multiply it and give it back to you. So then you are causing your own problems that you are experiencing.
Yeah, profound. I think no, I'm right there with you. I think there has to be space for change depending on what issues are tending to the animosity.
Yeah.
And because if it's becoming, you see, I think if you hang in there, I think it's great to want to hang in there to set a good example for your kids. And I think, you know, as I'm thinking about that, every day you say yes to keep committing to your marriage, and you wrestle with whatever comes up. I think every day you are striving to hang in there for your kids.
But hanging in there for your kids, it sounds good.
Right.
But what does it really mean? Every situation is different. But sometimes hanging in there for your kids means something that we have looked at in the chapter, or that we plan to look at, where there's no example. So if it's a female child and you stay in there, you are telling that female child, stay and take it. If it's a male child, you are telling that child, your female will stay and take it. So and you, growing up in environments are so important. They draw animals, they draw creatures to come and live, and the environment has to be correct for a creature desire to be there.
Yeah.
If the environment becomes toxic, that creature wants to leave. An animal that's not a human will not come to an environment that is not good for it. So if there's no water, that animal will travel distances to find water because it needs water. And so in a relationship where you're being abused in some form and you stay, you are saying that this environment, you're creating an environment that your children will get used to.
Right.
And say, well,
that's normal.
Yeah.
So yeah, well, let me clarify a little bit then. I think to add or to say, when I say hang in there, I guess I'll have to distinguish between what's external challenges and internal. And I think it's a great thing when, you know, you have these external things that's coming against the family and the home, and you as mother and father, husband and wife are together wrestling through those things. Then that's great. But what I hear you saying, and I agree, is if it's internal, where it's coming from violent behavior, abusive behavior from the father to the mother, or whatever, the next way around, or whatever it is, it becomes harmful if you hang in there, because what we're saying is, hey, this is normal, and this is what you should look for. And I love that.
And I prefer to back up this whole thing. So like let's reverse. Let's go back to the beginning. You mentioned earlier about the principle of living an example.
Yeah, the unintentional grooming. Yeah.
Unintentional grooming of a child.
Hmm.
And that is where we fail. It is always better I used to learn a thing when I was small. It is always better for you to repair something earlier than later. And what I learned when I was small, it goes a stitch in time saves 9. And so we are trying to catch a situation after the horse has left the gate.
I like that.
So I want to go back to the beginning where we should be living and hanging out. If you have the opportunity to hear this and you have not jumped in yet, then we need to look at, and when I say jumped in, I mean you have not jumped into a relationship. Then we need to look at the beginning. If you're not in a serious relationship yet, you need to be groomed. If you have been groomed, fine. But if you're not, you need to be groomed.
Right.
A male child, what would the person be groomed for? A male child needs a different grooming. The male child should be groomed on how to be a foundation for the relationship. How to be able to love, to be able to sacrifice for his family, because that is love. And if he is not being trained for that and he's growing up selfish and looking out just for self, then he does need a relationship. He can do fine with having some other form of entertainment and ways to exercise his sexual needs. But he doesn't need a family because he's selfish. A female should be groomed, and this is from the beginning. She should be groomed as a child. She should be groomed on how to investigate. We should be teaching little girls how to investigate from they are small. I was thinking of this, that I've looked on the internet and see where a parent would encourage the child to curse. This is a little 2-3-year-old child. And they laugh, and it's so sweet to them when they hear this little baby that can hardly speak curse. The nice, juicy, fat, full language. And they find it funny. So if you can teach that child to mimic that type of language from early on, why can't you teach that child to mimic inspecting and investigating? Because what happens here is you're asking how long should you stay in there before you tap out. But if you're careful enough and equipped enough and groomed enough to know how to inspect and evaluate and check a man before saying I do to that man, or living with that man, then you give yourself a head start. A good one too.
Right. Yeah, it starts, it all comes back to starting right in the home.
Yeah.
And I guess our encouragement here is to, be wise, be intentional as we continue to think about, especially that question about the animosity that leads to the absence. I think it's important that you be wise in that area. I really thank you for taking a crack at the question.
Yeah, no problem.
Before I get to my next question, do you have any point you want to add here? Anything you want to drop in?
I just had a thought here that I wrote, and it goes: the prince is not a king when he has been crowned.
Woo!
But he has been practicing from the moment he was born. That is how you raise kings. They are not kings when they are crowned. They are kings from birth. And I just wanted to throw that in here. In kingdoms, they understand this, and all the servants, they need to look at a little child and call that child master. Because that child is being groomed to understand you are a king. This is how kings behave.
Right.
This is how kings are respected. And then likewise in the family, you groom that son, you groom that daughter into what they are. See them as they are. You'll be somebody's wife someday. You need to know how to choose properly.
Wow.
You'll be somebody's husband one day. You need to stop being selfish. Or you end up going from woman to woman and having complaints.
That's a profound principle. I think that requires us seeing in the now and also somehow seeing tomorrow.
Yes.
Yeah, I love that. I love that is important, man. Seeing now and seeing you're seeing them now, you're seeing that potential, but you're pulling it into production. Powerful,
Yeah.
powerful stuff. Any other thing you want to add on under that principle or thought? That's whoa. I like that.
I just thought, as you said, you have to look into the future. I'm trying to figure, I don't understand how the eagle could do it. And if a bird brain can do it, I don't see why humans have to walk around like we have less than bird brains.
Mm.
It is not good enough to be jumping in bed. That is being
Mm-hmm.
bird brain.
Mm.
You meet this person the same night and you jump in, man.
Mm.
Yeah,
Mm.
I'm done with that.
Yeah. um,
Yeah,
man, no, it's for sure. And I think again, it just comes back to the lack of training and mentorship.
yeah,
Um, as I get to engage young minds in a campus context, I'm finding out that when you drop certain things on them, it's like I've never heard that before.
yeah,
And so which brings me to another question: is it solely because in the book it talks about you talk about the woman as this nurturer and should be taking the young child, specifically the male, from I guess birth to about the age of maybe 9, I guess 10,
yeah,
and the father needs to take over from about maybe 12, and that's something I've seen also echoed in other teachings, which I think is powerful
yeah,
because he needs a soft place to land,
yeah.
but then he also needs that firm guidance and and and
Mhm.
and and learn responsibility from the male. But is the training and mentorships, is that responsibility solely on fathers and on the home? Is there any other agent, any other uh, heart or hand that can be of assistance in this work? You know.
I like the statement that says it takes a community to raise a child,
Mm,
but that is not to be taken lightly and, in a sense, be taken as an excuse to be careless and negligent.
mm-hmm.
Because yes, it takes a community, but the first community in raising the child should be the family. And it should be responsible for 90 to 95% of raising that child.
Mm-hmm.
So there are people that child will meet, people who have authority, policemen, teachers, principals,
Sure.
that will all play a role in training, but that's not where we are to be trained at home.
Mm,
That's our responsibility to
mm-hmm.
as parents to train our children at home. I want to
At
say that
home.
it is not, when you're looking at grooming and training and the whole principle of females nurturing, it is not bad to nurture a child. A baby needs nurturing.
Right. Right.
And it is good for the father to be at home helping. So it's not something that, well, when the child is 12, then I'm going to take over. No, 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 no.
That's good. Good.
The father can be there, should be there, nurturing and helping to train that child, male or female, in
Mm-hmm.
preparation to be a good husband or to be a good investigator.
Right.
Because the guarantee will be a good wife. I hope to be able to share a little bit on that later on, but that's a guarantee. But when it comes to the nurturing,
Mm-hmm.
nurturing can literally cripple someone.
Right.
It helps to a certain point. I want to talk about
No, go ahead,
a
please.
yeah, there's a History Channel thing that I saw, or Discovery Channel, and it was called Brainchild. And there was this
Hmm.
gentleman that I'm not sure if he had a mental issue,
Okay.
but he had a child, a daughter,
Mm-hmm.
and from birth he locked that daughter in his basement,
Wow.
and he just fed her in there.
Mm.
And it happened that after 12 years, I don't know how, but somebody found out that he was doing this. And when that child came out of that basement, because she did not get any type of how you call it? She did not get any type of
Exposure.
exposure, and not inspiration, but like when you incite something,
Mm-hmm.
because she did not get any growth in the area of her brain, she was
Mm.
12, she could not walk.
Wow.
and her brain was totally permanently damaged. She could never, for the rest of her life, become beyond the intelligence of a 3-year-old.
Man,
And so that
that's
is
crazy.
similar to what nurturing does to us. It is important. That man nurtured her in the sense that he fed her
Mm-hmm.
and he made sure that she had. I don't I believe he changed her clothes. I could assume. I could only assume because
Mm-hmm.
from you're born till 12, your body size changes.
Right.
But that nurturing was not enough. And
Hmm.
so I want to say in homes when you have women feeling that it is okay to just nurture, 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 you're going to damage your child
Mm-hmm.
because that child needs to be able to stand on his or her own feet.
Mm-hmm.
And that is where a father comes in to take over that part and make sure that there's not too much pampering done. Because
Right.
life does not pamper you.
Yeah. Yeah. Nah, I think that's a super important point. Because especially when it comes to, well, sometimes I've seen growing up some mothers feel like the dad's being too hard on the son. Um,
Mm,
and I guess there is I guess sometimes maybe that could be the case, but I don't think
yeah,
it should be misunderstood that discipline and being firm and teaching them to be a man is important. And again, this what we're saying here, man, is sometimes it speaks to the how the manufacturer set it up, that
yeah,
each entity in the home, each gender is necessary
yes, yes.
for a holistic upbringing
Hmm.
of a child, and though culture and world wants to say it differently, um
Yeah,
and
yeah,
we see the effects that that's having, right?
yes.
We could people could lie to themselves and say it's working, but we obviously know it's not working.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so the manufacturer made them male and female for that specific purpose, you know.
Yes.
I learned years ago that if I tell you only the truth without love, I'll cripple you. But if I give you all love without truth, you'll remain a baby.
Wow.
You know.
Wow.
If it's all truth without love, you will I will cripple you. But if I give you all love without truth, you will remain a baby. You won't grow. And so
Hmm.
they couple together for a holistic upbringing. Um,
I want to challenge that statement though.
all right, go ahead.
As powerful as it might sound, and understanding that I will never ever look on love the same way. I believe I will never look on it the same way for the rest of my life. So whenever I hear the word love, and
Mm,
whenever anybody use the word love to me, I ask myself the question, are we talking about the same type of love?
right.
Because love can mean many different things.
Mm-hmm.
So when you say if you love the person,
Mm-hmm.
that is exactly what a husband should be doing to his wife. He should be
Mm-hmm.
doing to his kids.
Mm-hmm.
Parents should be doing to their children.
Right.
And you do not love a child if you spoil that child to the point where he becomes a criminal.
That's
That's
right.
not love.
That's right.
Because again, as you said earlier, you are not looking into the future that
Mm-hmm.
this child will end up in jail, being beaten by police,
Mm-hmm.
being shot dead,
Mm-hmm.
and that is not love.
Mm-hmm.
So I would challenge that, but I do like what you said earlier, and it's a very important point that it takes the way the manufacturer set this thing up,
Mm-hmm.
the way it was created to work.
Right.
This is an atomic structure.
Mm-hmm.
The nucleus and the electron and the proton, they are designed to work together in a trilogy tandem. So in a family, it's designed to have a mother, a father, and the children, and there's this triangle. The manufacturer says that that should all take place inside a covenant,
Mm-hmm.
where whenever you start to speak covenant, people behavior change.
Mm.
If you want to do a transaction with somebody and they're a thief, they don't want to do covenant. They don't want you to have their address, their phone number there because you might be buying something from them and they just
Mm-hmm.
want your money that they can run off.
Mm-hmm.
But the minute that person is willing to get into a covenant, into a contract with you, you have a better chance to say that it is more legit. And so
Right.
in a family, it is not jumping for one night because the person looks good and you want to have sex. It is about a covenant, and the manufacturer says that the proper order that you do this thing is you make a covenant, and then you have your children and you together raise them.
Right.
And that is the complete best structure, the way the manufacturer design it. Anything outside of that, you'll have to work 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 20, 30 times as hard to get the same result.
Or you might not even get the result.
You might not even get it.
You might
Yeah.
not even get the result. Yeah, I think you might not even get results. As we're talking though, I mean, you man, you shared a very powerful experience in the chapter about when you were teaching, and you know, the mom comes storming into the class, all the
Yeah.
kids are fearful, and she's basically saying to her son, you're gonna do what you gotta do. And
Yeah.
when she leaves, he says, I'm not gonna do it. And I think the point you were making is the importance of a strong male raising a male.
Yeah.
That a woman doesn't fully know what a man needs to be a man. And
Yes.
but what's your advice to a single mom? Let's say there's a mom who understands this principle, they agree with this principle.
Yeah.
What is your advice to her in raising her male son to try to break this vicious cycle of becoming another like weak husband or a father, or becoming somebody that would abandon their family? What's your advice to a single mom who says, "Hey, I hear what you guys are saying. Um, what's your advice to her in raising her son?"
This you have asked me a very hard question, and I have to put my hand on my head to try to gather myself to answer that question. It's very difficult because it it was not designed to be done by the female alone.
Mhm.
And so for that female to raise her child, it is a tall task.
Mm.
When you look at what has to happen, imagine this. This lady has to go out to work. That is
Wow.
not her curse. She has her curse. From the minute a child is born, she dealt with one of her curses.
Mm-hmm.
And the child did not come there by miracle. So that means that you know the curse has taken place. And now instead of that lady being able to stay at home and rear her child, along with the help of the child's father, that
Mm.
lady has to go out to work.
Mm.
So that child is walking around, going from place to place free. And she cannot be at home for when that child comes home
Mm.
because she has to be at work.
Man.
And so
Mm.
someone else has to take care of her child. And so we end up with a society where everything else rears your child than you
Wow.
because the father is absent.
Yeah.
So that is why I have my hand on my head trying to think, well, it's how do you tell somebody to stop their car when the brakes
Mm.
stops working?
Mm. Yeah. I guess a follow-up question would be, would you advise or encourage her to seek out another not for her companionship's sake, but maybe seek out maybe a program or something somewhere, someone that could stand in the gap and just to fill in.
Yes.
Would that be something wise for her to do?
Yes, I'm glad you said that because that takes us into the topic of having a mentor.
Yeah.
And as we sort of suggested earlier, this can be indirect, it can be direct. But you don't want to take the chance of having indirect mentors because
Mm-hmm.
it might not happen.
Right. Right.
And so being direct in being, you first have to be aware that something is missing.
Mm-hmm.
And when you know something is missing, then you can do something about it. And if you know that the father is not there, then that means you understand that something is missing. And what will we do now that something is missing? And that is where you try to do programs, discipline type of programs. All sports are good, and males love sports. So there will be access to some mentor. With
Mm-hmm.
the only caveat, you have to be careful of checking that they are getting the correct type of mentorship
Yeah, proper mentorship, right.
and that they are not being raised up amongst predators that will hurt them physically.
Right.
You see?
Right. I like that.
So again, a lady's job is to investigate. You have to investigate.
There's
And
that
if you're not
principle
good
again. Yeah.
investigating to even choose a good man, and now you're a single mother, then how will you know that coach is good? Or
Right.
that teacher is good?
Right.
So at the end of the day, the responsibility of the female is to properly equip herself to investigate. And yes, by all means, don't try to do yourself a job that requires multiple people. There's a part in the manual that says one of us can take down 1,000. But two of us can send thousands fleeing.
That's right.
And so there's a principle of working together. But if you're by yourself, you're at work and you're frustrated. And when you come home, you're so tired, it's hard to hear the problems your child is going through. You know?
Wow. Wow. Yeah, I was definitely thinking about that. Permit me, man. Your point gives me one more question, and this is like a part 3 question. What are some of the let's say, okay, again, she's like, I hear you. Okay, what do I look for? What do I need? What are at least 3 or 4 things she can look for in a mentor for her son? That she would say, I hand him over to you for you to help in shaping and grooming him. What are some things that she should look for in this mentor, or that should be present there?
The thing that's important, I try to say, my first one would be, it is good to have somebody that the child respects.
Right.
Because if it's a teenage young man, it's not like a young boy that's more malleable at, say, 5, 6, 7. It's easier to find someone to mentor him because any adult male that little child will look up to. But after you become a teenager, then things change. And there are people that you will more respect. Maybe the person loves music. Then you want to look for someone in that genre, and pun intended, that your child would respect, no? And so that is where I would start. And then second to that, because that opens the door for the child to be willing to be mentored. And then second to that is to evaluate this person. So you have to be investigating. Now you have to be at work by yourself. And you have to be investigating now the people. So if you're going to a sports thing with your child, you know he loves football, you have to be there and observe the different coaches that are there. So that if it doesn't happen organically, you can go to the coach and see. I'll be honest to you, I had this written down and I wasn't going to say it again, but in the years of teaching music, I remember in more than one situation where, because of the person I was, the females around me, they had an attraction towards me when it came to teaching their children. Not a romantic one, but they saw something in me that attracted them to me and asked constantly for help. So they would pay for classes. This one lady had her sons come to me for classes, and she made it very clear, I want you to mentor them. So she was paying me in advance sometimes for classes, but her intention was for me to mentor her child. And this has happened over and over, to the point now where I almost call the people I teach my sons, the males, because they literally come to me and tell me that. And so it is there where the mother can be direct and say, look, I kind of need you to help me mentor my son.
Yeah, I think it's a good thing to talk about and give some advice there. And one thing I want to add here, because I have probably one more question, and then I'll leave it to you for your final points or thoughts. You know, we talk so much about the female eagles investigation, and what I hear you saying is, if the first investigation is done properly, there won't really be a need for a second one, you know. So it's just an encouragement again there, to the woman from the beginning to investigate properly. Make sure you grab your quote unquote twigs, like the eagle grabs her twig and branches, and test that male to make sure he's adequate. you know, and of course, even after proper testing is done and things are good, some things happen in life beyond what we planned for, and would cause a meal to go absent.
Yeah.
That happens, but even so, you'd have already been trained properly to investigate. So, um,
Hmm.
yeah. So I guess you made a very also a nice point that I was personally encouraged by. Many of the other things in your in the chapter, you talked
Hmm.
about you don't need to be blood related to be like a father figure or to be a mentor in someone's life.
Yeah.
Um, again, what's I'm asking. I asked for your advice because I'm looking for practical things. What do you recommend? What's your advice for somebody who um they have been drawn into mentoring a young man,
Hmm.
um, but both of his parents are actually still in his life. But then still there's just this organic mentorship that took place. What's your advice for that um mentor? Um, what are there boundaries? Are there parameters? What does he do, especially if they both the parents are involved in the young man's life?
Yeah, it's a very good question, because what that is suggesting, that even when both parents are there, it doesn't mean both parents are there.
Mm-hmm.
I thought of the chapter, it spoke about absentee father, and
Yes.
it fell under two topics,
Yes.
where an absentee father can be someone that is in the home but is not at home. His
Presently
brain,
absent.
yeah, his brain is absent, or he's at home but he's abusive, being a predator, because a father will take care of you, not hurt you. So if this person is hurting you sexually, verbally, physically, then it is not functioning as a father, because a father is a function.
Mm-hmm.
The
Mm.
only time a father is biological is when you're being born,
Mm.
when you're being what's the word, created,
Mm-hmm.
when conception is happening,
Right.
then you're a father naturally. But when that child is born, and when that mother is going through her 9 months of pregnancy, then your father role changes to becoming, being there physically and accomplishing certain tasks that makes you a father.
Mm-hmm.
These tasks make you a father. So if you're not doing them, you're not a father.
Mm.
And there are many children that don't know their fathers, don't care about their fathers, and their fathers don't care about them.
Mm.
There are many
Yeah.
children that are hurting,
Mm.
and these situations cause a big problem,
Mm-hmm.
where a child without a father is a very good candidate
Mm.
for drug dealers, for gang leaders, and for all the societal ills that cause shooting and killing, and the destruction of a society.
Mm.
They become very good candidates,
Mm-hmm.
like excellent candidates. And so that mother has to be thinking
Mm.
ahead of time, and going
Mm.
and seeing how she can cover all the areas that need to be covered in that.
Yeah. 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 That's the add too, not just for the males, but man, I'm thinking about a conversation I had, and in that conversation, the young lady was saying, because of the lack of a father figure consistently, the first male that showed her any love, she was quote unquote swept off her feet. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so it applies there too. And I guess the heartbeat of my question is because sometimes it's important for I guess for mentors who are standing in the gap and it's genuinely helping and making an impact, that mentors are not meant to replace necessarily a parent or a father, but to help to supplement and raise up, because I think sometimes I've seen where that kind of contention have happened where the both the parents are there, but like they're not intentional about grooming and raising, and here comes somebody that's helping and standing in the gap, mentoring, and you know, jealousy rears its ugly head, if I could say so.
But
And
but
uh-huh.
but although that is very good what you're saying, it is also key what you're saying, because when the the person outside that's mentoring and provide, it doesn't have to be a long thing. It might be one statement.
Mm-hmm.
And that
Mm.
person mentoring, I was speaking to a young man, and I think yesterday, and he said that this guy told him he was going to be great. And that's all he needed to hear.
Mm. Mm.
A mentor looked at him, and that's all he told him: you are going to be great.
Mm.
And that formed his life, because he said, well, if I was going to make a decision, I asked myself, is this what great men do?
Mm. Mm.
And he would decide based on that. And now he's at the top of his career because of one statement made to him in his younger teenage years.
Mm-hmm.
And so that person that speaks to you, he might be in the area that you look up to, like you love
Mm-hmm.
basketball or you love music.
Mm-hmm.
And that one word could cover thousands of words from a parent. And the mentors, they especially rear their heads. The external indirect mentors rear their heads when there is a lack in the parent. Then that has to come from somewhere else. So I would say to the mentor, be careful to allow that child to understand you should respect authority.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So you should respect your father. He's a drunkard, yes, you should respect him.
I like that.
He quarrels with your mother, he hits her, you should respect him, because the manufacturer, I'm not saying you should encourage him to hit your mother or to fight with
Right.
your mother.
Right.
I'm saying you should respect him, because the manufacturer says that your life length is hinged on that.
Woo. Mm.
If you can't respect your parents, the manufacturer promise you will have a short life.
Mm. Mm.
So you need to encourage that child to respect. The father might not be up to the rank of a father, but in terms of his behavior, he's not fulfilling his responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
Still respect him, and the mentor should be very clear with that. But at the same time, the mentor should not hold back giving principles, because even if you say something now, again, I had a conversation right this week. If you say something, you might think you're not being heard.
Mm.
And I remember these young men looking at me and saying, man, the life we are living now, one person looked at me and said, my marriage is sweet, sweet, sweet.
Mm.
And he said, you know why my marriage is sweet? Because I remember everything we used to discuss.
Mm.
You see?
Mm.
And here I was thinking, because they would tell you to your face, they don't agree with you. You're talking nonsense.
Yep.
But to hear years after these guys saying, my marriage is sweet, and the reason is because of our talks that we had.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't have to worry if a parent is not functioning, you're jealous. If you are giving the truth to that child, and you're not turning that child against the parent, you're saying respect your parents. There's no other way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because nothing else is important if you're going to die because you're not respecting your parents.
Yeah, that's good. And I think what I hear you saying and what I'm getting is that meant the aim of a mentor is not to be adored by the mentoree, it's to point them to a proper way of living, especially according to the manufacturer. So
Right.
I think that it's not to get this person to be loyal to you all the days of your life. It's to get them to be aligned with the manufacturer's way of life for a more robust and flourishing life. Yeah. So what are you have any final points or thoughts as that you want to add here?
Oh, of course.
Go ahead, sir.
Of course. I would like to finally say something to the males, because we're talking about the key of mentoring and training. And you asked such a very important question earlier that I just want to go back to it. And in the case where a person has slipped the training, which won't be because of his own fault, but because of negligent parent, because of a mother who did not know how to choose a good husband, because of a father who was not trained on how to be a good husband.
Right.
And so now they are not together. But nevertheless, you have this person that is an adult, a mature adult, an adult person, adult male. And I want to stay with the male. Females, you simply need to know how to investigate a man. That's your only responsibility. You find a wife, you find a good thing, and this is what the manufacturer says. That is saying that this model that is called a wife, this model comes prepackaged with everything you need. That is what a good thing means. So once you have a wife, she comes prepackaged with everything you need. If the wife is not working, something is wrong with you. So I don't want to speak with the wife. I want to speak to the husbands. And so how do you train a man that is already a grown man, but does not know how to become a husband? What can make this man change? What can let him be willing to learn? And so I want to give some things that can cause that male to be willing to accept mentorship. Because now we're saying it is beyond mentoring as a child, and it's mentoring now as an adult. And one is that man coming to his senses and realizing that something is wrong with me. All the women that I go to, the relationship does not work. I'm the common denominator. What can I do to fix this? The next thing that will make a male change is being in crisis. And this is something that women can help with. If you stay and take what the man is giving you, then the man will continue. If you say, you know what happened, until you can get your act together, I'm leaving, or you're getting out this house, out my house, or out your house, or I'm leaving, and you apply that amount of pressure that life does not continue the same, that he feels comfortable doing the same thing, or not doing what he should be doing and continue in that manner. When there's a crisis, then a man will be willing to be open to counseling, to advice, to growth, etc., etc. No? Too many times you find the lady being ready to go into counseling and get counsel from an advice from a counselor, and the man is not interested. And so these two things would cause a man that is completely mature, it's too late to mentor him now as a child, and you have to try to work with him as an adult. These two things help with that. And I would like to end with that, saying that training, if you can't get anything, get training. It is just like how they say, get an education, get training. And that's for the man and the woman. Two different type of training, but get training.
Right. Very, very. Man, that's amazing. As we conclude, I think so many times the emphasis on education, which is great, right? Education empowers you to provide for yourself and your family in the future.
Yeah.
But what about not just providing, but being productive in terms of caring and nurturing? So education is great, but this emphasis on training for life and marriage and relationship needs to be that needs to be, I want to say, promoted more.
Yeah.
If I could use that word. I think as hard as we're pushing, or even as hard as we're talking about the importance of education, harder for the training of young men and women for future mothers and fathers, right? So
yeah, and I want to say that it's not hard. It is hard when it's too late. But it is not hard, and it is still education.
Yes.
Because that is what education is. Just that in one case, you're preparing that child and you pay money for him to go to school or her, and they have to pass this test and pass that test, and you spend money and take them to school and spend money on projects, and you allow them to go on trips, all sort of things for that type of education. This is also education.
Right.
Because this is how we learn, this is how we grow, by being educated. And so it's just, when we have only one type of education, then we are off balance, and we are teaching them only to become good at working. And so you'll find the schools trying to implement other types of education, which we call soft skills, which has to do with attitude, respect, that type of thing. And then you have the other type of education that has to do with how to be a good husband,
right,
and a good wife. They want to teach you how to have sex in schools.
Yeah.
They're making all kind of manuals on what to teach your little children how to have sex.
Right.
And how to have all kind of sex. If you can do that, and you want to do that in school, then what is so wrong with teaching that child how to be a good husband? What is wrong with teaching that child how to look for a good? So it's education. And the education will cause you to grow. And there's another education that has to do with what happens to you after you die. That's another very important education. It's not what we are discussing here, but I'm just saying, so there are many different types of education. and the one for school is only a quarter of what you need to survive in life.
Right.
Yeah.
So ladies and gentlemen, as we wrap up for this chapter, I just want to say this chapter 2, read it again. It's available on Amazon. The audiobook is there on YouTube. And it's great. It's a great read. It's not a waste of time, it's an investment of time. And so until next time, I'm Shane, and on the other
I'm
side,
Sylburn.
Take care. Later on.